rocking.
Yeah. All right. Sweet.
Easy done. Just give me one sec. Let's do it. Welcome back to the Failing Upwards Club. This is a space for us to reflect on the tough lessons from failure, working through everything you need to know, how to improve, how to not repeat the same mistakes again, and all from epic failures in our lives, particularly to do with business. I'm Mike. I'm not even Mike. I'm actually Danny. I'm just so used to Mike doing the intro. I don't even have the rolling transcript going, and I've still called myself Mike on that. But I'm actually Danny. Mike's over there. And we used to be co-founders of a company called DataCo, which, if you take this conversation as anything to go by, you wouldn't be surprised that it's turned absolutely to mush. But while we are unfortunately in a situation where DataCo very much is mush, there is a whole lot of things that we decided would be great to reflect on and learn from the experience, and to use some content as a way of nearly having public open therapy around what worked, what didn't work, and see where we can go to in the future. So Mike, welcome back to our second episode of the Failing Upward Club. How are you feeling? How are you feeling since we've launched kind of the first episode and starting to dig into the content?
Feeling good, Danny. I feel like we just scratched the surface last time, so I'm looking forward to getting into the real meat and potatoes of it today.
Right, there's lots of meat and lots of potatoes, because today we're talking about value, and what other value for money is just buying some basic meat and potatoes for dinner. There's not too much better value for money than that. But really, what we are going to talk about today is to do with the value proposition of a business. It's one of those things which is at the heart of what you do when you think about what you're going to build as a business and how you're going to take it to market and get other people to buy it. Really, it's about what value you deliver and how you articulate that value. And I think it's one of those pretty meaty areas. It does have a lot of different things to unpack and discuss and to think through. But I think the way, Mike, that I was thinking about working into this conversation is just to start with kind of the headlines of what I see from going through and putting some thoughts down on paper, what some of the key lessons were. And I'm sure as we go through the conversation, there'll be others. But really, I had three things that kind of came to mind when I was trying to put some thoughts down around what we'd learned around the value proposition. So are you ready? I just want to make sure you're strapped in, because
I'm ready to
a
go.
Good take. All right. Well, hopefully everyone else is ready. Well, the first point is really your business will die without short-term value articulation. You need to have a long-term vision, but you need to be able to sell the short-term gain. So that's kind of my first key take. My second key take is really around people won't necessarily always be able to tell you the value they need, particularly if you're thinking about going into spaces like white space or category creation or innovative tech or innovative products. The truth is they may not know what they ultimately need. And I know most of the textbooks kind of say, go and ask them all the questions, but the truth is, I think people won't always know the value if you want to push into the innovation space, and you need to be able to help them understand why there's value there and how you can help it come to life. So that's kind of my second key take. And then the third one is I don't think this is a surprise to anyone, but articulating value in a way which is simple and which is differentiated from competitors or alternatives in the market is just super fucking hard. It's just a really difficult task to do. And it's not something you can do by getting some consultants to come and sit down in a room with you and you have a workshop in the afternoon and get out your sticky notes. It's something which takes time to refine and to test and to tweak and to improve. And you never really get to that point until the results actually start to show up, where you know that value articulation is getting there. So the act of actually articulating value simply and in a way which is easy to understand is just a skill you need throughout your business life forever, and you're always going to have to work on. So I think those are my three key takes, Mike, and I think it's probably worth us just kind of diving into a few of the details around some of those, getting your kind of thoughts around where that works, where that doesn't, and we can start to talk about some of the things we actually did in those different areas and what was good and what didn't work and what we would do different if we're going to do it again.
Yeah, love it. I've got plenty of thoughts on all three of them. So maybe do you want to kick off with a bit more detail on the short-term value articulation, and then I can jump in and maybe then unpack the second one.
Yeah, let's do it. So short-term value articulation and kind of long-term vision. I think one of the things we found throughout the whole time we were building DataCo was like the vision we had for what we wanted to do needed to be grand, and like we saw in front of us what the opportunity was, and particularly I think we touched on the first episode around we came from the client side, and as we were there kind of thinking through what we wanted to do with a client in mind in particular, it helped us to say, well, here are the different aspects of what we want to do. And then the assumption was when we go out, other people are going to be able to buy into this vision and this idea. But the reality is a lot of what we were doing was a really kind of big space. It was thinking about ecosystems. It was thinking about like partnerships and how lots of things come together. And a lot of it was great. It was great value in terms of what it all meant and people thinking about it. But the truth is, not all of it was something that someone was going to get value from today. And it wasn't going to solve their short-term value today. And I think it took us quite a while to get to the story and the articulation of value, which was really what was solving someone's problem immediately, and how they were going to then be able to sell that inside their business if they're going to be a buyer, how they were going to show that they were going to get a return on investment straight away. And the short-term value might have been a fraction of what we knew we could do from a capability perspective or what we thought their business could do. But the truth is, without getting to that point, it's just really hard to sell just the big vision. And I think there's always those learnings around people selling the big vision to investors and thinking about why the story, you're trying to get a business off the ground and you want to have that conviction around why it's going to be such a big thing. But I think understanding how you differentiate between talking about long-term vision and short-term vision is incredibly important when it comes to getting a business off the ground.
Yeah, 100%, Danny. And I think, as you've sort of said in the opening, a little bit of it as well is, when you get stuck in the mode of, trying to elicit future opportunities from clients, it's you realize pretty quickly that there's not a lot of clients can articulate kind of the thing next week. As you said, they're solving today's problems. So you sort of end up in a mix of, asking about what's next, trying to kind of get them to understand the future, to almost co-create it with you. But oftentimes, actually, what they're looking for is for someone else to kind of do the hard thinking, to be able to sell a convincing narrative around what the future looks like and come and deliver the first step of what might be a multi kind of phase approach to realizing future value. The other one that I know you've pulled out and we've discussed previously is, and I think it was very central to some of our challenges, was ultimately we were selling a future opportunity. We weren't solving necessarily a challenge that exists for businesses today. And again, there's the whole kind of value canvas and all of these frameworks that you run through early on in the creation. And, part of the theory is it's easier to sell the Panadol to someone that's got a headache than sell the gym membership to, someone who's thinking about, the future opportunity. And I think we definitely felt that, like, in a massive way. And so being able to really kind of switch gears from selling this grandiose future vision of connecting multiple different kind of disparate parts of an ecosystem together into, hey, what's the very tactical thing we can solve for a particular, very specific client set, was ultimately very important.
Yeah, it's completely true. And I think the extension to that is also the nature of what you're trying to solve in terms of, can it be solved now, and just how important is it for it to be solved now. And the truth, for many years as we were starting this business, we started with technology focused on solving how you use data with strategic partners, really. We spoke around, we knew the value of the ecosystem, but we understood the concepts of even what we're saying now. And it was like, how do you simplify that? How do you just make the really basic activity of what they just need to do now in that concept? And for something like partnerships, the reality is most businesses just don't do a lot. And their partnership is as much a marketing tool as it is anything else. They go and they make the big strategic announcement about it, and then it's just like, what's the minimum I just need to do to get this thing going? And it's really, really basic. And we knew that was the space of the issue because there was so much value that could be unlocked from there. But the truth was, when we went to have those conversations, most of those organizations were like, I don't even know what we're doing with our data internally, and I can't even get this like internal initiative going, or I can't get this marketing campaign off the ground. And just those day-to-day problems of what they really felt, unless you found someone who was focused in a role like that, it was just very, very hard to get traction.
Yeah, and I think it's even more than that. And the reality is probably far, starker or bleaker in a lot of large organizations. I recall one conversation we had with not a client, but a prospect in the private health insurance sector that, we were talking about insights and partnerships and a number of different propositions, and the feedback from the product team or the customer team was, how we could keep more customers or make our customers more happy, and that's just paying out their claims within a time frame of relevance.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that's the perfect context, right? It's like, instead of taking a month to give someone their money after they've just come out of hospital from major surgery, we've got all the information we need. Why don't we just process that in a fortnight? Or hell, imagine if we did it in a week, how cool that would be. Forget the partnerships, forget the loyalty strategy, forget all of that. Just keep the core business humming. And actually a lot of businesses would be, not even incrementally, but exponentially better performing than they are today.
Yeah, it's a great lesson for businesses in general, right? It's just like, you talk about, is there value in your problem? But it's more like, is there the immediate urgency, and like, is that value outweighing other things that they could do? It's that opportunity cost concept that really comes to mind, because it's not saying, oh yeah, you could get some return on this investment. But the truth is, if we keep fucking up people's claims, we're not going to keep our customers. And so it doesn't matter if I've got this cool partnership that I've got a fancy marketing campaign going on with. So it really becomes trying to navigate to find those core problems that you're really solving. And again, it's one of those classic startup, building a business and say, what's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem? But it's easier said than done. It's not until you go and get in the trenches when you see what's actually going on in someone's business and what they're doing day to day. And sometimes that's just also the luck of finding the right people to go and do it. I think one of the things we found on our journey is the first couple of years we were just trying to solve a really like a curly, future-facing Horizon 2 problem around technology, like ecosystems and partnerships and the technology that solves that. And where we kind of made a big transition in our business is where we made that step to, I think, what we'd like call like the crown jewel of the solution, which became the data as well. And we'll go into more detail as we go through some different topics around technology and around data and how important that was. But it was when we brought in the data that we said, hey, yes, we've got all these future-facing things around our proposition, but we've got things that will solve it right now. You don't have to worry about a partnership. We can solve an immediate opportunity around how you understand your business and how you understand the opportunity for growth. And we saw people's eyes kind of light up because they recognized that value. It was no longer around us trying to articulate the value of ecosystems. They saw something of value straight away. But I think what was like a learning in a positive way in terms of what we did do right, because we had this vision and because we had these capabilities which were articulating something more, it meant that it nearly helped to de-risk the first decision just to buy that small widget of insight, because it wasn't just I'm going to now go into this relationship with this supplier and I have to get them onboarded and I have to go through all of these different things just to buy this little widget. But I know actually there's so much more value that I can get out of this relationship as us as a vendor with their business, that it felt like that was helping to de-risk. And that was just a little bit to do with the nature of how we had to build and where it got to. But I think that ability to show value in the short term, I don't think it's about not having longer term value articulation. It's just about how you say those things together in a story which makes sense.
Yeah, and I think part of the other complexity in our specific situation, and again, this probably is true for other founders who are trying to create companies within inside of a corporate venture structure, is that part of the value articulation, or we had multiple kind of ICPs or like customer profiles that we had to articulate value for, or that we were building value for. And I think that's one of the things we always struggled with. We had to straddle and manage, and there's a big focus on this when we get up to the go-to-market and sales aspect. But there was a value articulation for the bank as an investor in our business, and that's really that future value. That's about, as you said, that big connected ecosystem with the bank as a central node. And this was all publicly expressed strategic initiatives that the bank was coming out with, right? And it was like, great, they're saying it publicly, we need to map to that, because obviously that's how you kind of keep your senior endorsement going in a setting like that. Then there's the bank as a customer, leveraging the core technology. So that's like selling the solution today to them and their strategic partners, right? But then, hey, you know what? As often happens, the strategic focus shifts in the near term, and what we recognize was, hey, that's probably not the hill we can go and die on. We've got to go and diversify here, and that's where data as a product comes in, and that's where you're then articulating value to an end consumer who's not even involved inside of that bank's ecosystem. And so I think that's probably one of the unique challenges, where you don't just have this transactional investor business relationship and then, business client relationships. You've kind of got everything masquerading as one or the other. And sometimes the stakeholders can wear many hats within inside of that. And I think if we look back on it, I don't know how you would change that. Like, I think strategically we probably played things the right way. And then throw in one added layer of complexity where you've got channel conflict, where you've even got, partners selling against you in some circumstances. So I think at the end of the day, it all just becomes very, very complex. I think where the learnings come to, and I don't want to kind of steal them from a future conversation, but it's about how you kind of delineate and how you get very focused on kind of short-term articulation that drives short-term revenue. Because you know what? I think the most important thing is being self-sufficient to be able to stay alive at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting breakdown of a few different problems with articulating value, and as you said, starting to cross into different streams in terms of sales, in terms of partners. But I just want to pick up on one word that you said there and ask you a question, Mike, which is to do with complexity. Like, how would you rate how well we did at articulating value simply? Like, and you can think about that at different points in time of the journey. Like, when it comes to articulating value simply, how would you honestly reflect how we did?
I think we probably got a pass more times than we got a fail, but I don't think we're ever. It's kind of like my uni results. There was only one or two HDs mixed in there. A lot of it was pass marks.
I love that talks about your uni experience when you just had pass or fail. That's all you thought about at uni, wasn't it?
No, I mean, it was great. It was a great network, all this sort of stuff. Melbourne Business School, loved you.
Oh, no, I was talking more like high distinctions and the other kind of grades. You were just pass or fail, right?
I got a couple HDs, but, it wasn't going to help me with the story. But no, I think we did okay. I think what I was going to give this to you as a question. Did we articulate value simply? I think we struggled with that. But I think the learning through that was that, there's not, or from my perspective, there's not a single, it's very hard to land on a single talk track that allows you to communicate value to all the various stakeholders you're going to interact with. So I think that's probably one thing, probably being a bit more disciplined on who's the customer persona, whether that's in technology teams, governance teams, and what have you, and probably being very deliberate around how you're evolving and adapting the message to those different personas. But I think the other thing that you said a number of times over the last couple of years, Danny, is that as you try and simplify a message, you sort of get stuck on this continuum where if you're too technical, the non-technical people will say, yeah, but you're just throwing all this jargon at me. And then when you abstract it or simplify it too much, then as you correctly pointed out, well, either you start to sound like every other competitor within the category that you play, or actually when you simplify it even more, you sound like every other solution within a really broad market category. And trying to find that balance was incredibly complex, and I don't think we nailed it.
No, I completely agree, and I think that concept around the continuum is bang on. Like, we smashed our head against the wall so many times talking through this, and it comes down to, because if I remember some of the time when I was working in consulting, and there was the same framework I brought up a million times, which is this one visualization, which is this old like Deloitte value map that just goes through like the value levers of a business, and at the top are like the most macro things, which is like revenue, cost, and like I think there's actually risk and equity are in there as well. And then beneath all of those levers, you've got different levers to pull from a revenue perspective. You can grow more clients, you can increase your prices, you can do a whole lot of other different things like that. Same with in the operational perspective. And as soon as you want to do it super simply, and you just say, oh, just give me the one liner that says you will grow your customers. It's like everyone says that, and you, to your point, you get stuck in that situation where you look at a website and it looks the same and no one can say what you do with your product, and you just kind of get stuck in that hole. And there's no easy way to get out of that is the truth. And this is, I think I said it in the start, it's like the process just to continue to refine your value proposition and to find the things that resonate is just like test and learn and test and learn and test and learn and challenge it. Like if people are getting the value, then you know you're kind of on the right track. But it's still, even by the end, our value prop and the general proposition of the business and what we were trying to do and like what we did from the product suite holistically was not simple really. Like we went after quite an aggressive strategy, and we'll come to this in the sales aspect, I'm sure, of like, it was like multi-product, multi-industry proposition. And we spoke forever through the life of our business around what we had as an opportunity ahead of us was a blessing and a curse. And we had so many different things that we could tackle, and holistically being able to touch so many of the things is what made the proposition very interesting, from these core insights about your business through to how you can securely activate data with partners, through to how you measure that, the effectiveness, and loop it all through together. And the story together is where we got a lot of value articulation, but it was very hard to get to the point where we could just articulate it simply. And did that hurt us? Like, well, obviously we're sitting here and we don't have a business anymore that is DataCo. And were we able to articulate it fast enough? Like, the history will say no. But the reality is it was way more nuanced than that. I think early on, for a couple of years, we didn't do as good a job with it. And we did the whole classic. We were focused more on the product and the platform. And there's other reasons for that. This is where it comes back to the corporate venture capital complexity. When your first customer is your anchor customer and your like major significant investor who essentially has control over your company and will drive the fate of your company, you have to be able to put them first. And what value they care about isn't the same value we're trying to build and articulate in market. And we had years of going through that transitionary period, trying to be the kid that didn't just leave home and was living out in the granny flat, to the kid that lived in his share house with his mates but was still coming back and was having dinner on Sunday and getting a bag full of groceries to take back home. Like, to the point where we were finally got our first grad job where we got some good salary, and we're like, man, this is awesome. I can buy whatever I want now. I can go on a trip. I'm in that. We weren't like a wealthy 40-year-old who'd had a 20-year career, but we definitely made that first kind of role where we're like, man, we're
We were eating
we're on our
we
own
were
here.
eating avo and toast, Danny. That's what we were
We
doing.
were having avo on toast. We were like, that was like a good stage. But the reality is, those first few years of getting out to that point, it just articulating the value, like what the value that drove our business and where we were focused, just was a little bit not quite aligned. And this is the corporate venture capital learnings. It's a hard thing to build a business which is nearly, to start with, a semi-internal function in terms of how it's perceived and how it's looked and how it's assessed. Like, our metrics, without going into the details, was literally how many partnerships we were enabling for the bank, and what was the, like, what use cases were we being able to enable for them. And that wasn't wrong necessarily, because if we were, I think the way we always looked at about it, Mike, was if we were a garage startup and we said, here's a business, and ANZ Bank were like, awesome, we'll be your first client, and here's all this stuff I need you to deliver. I don't care about doing anything else. You have to prioritize us. We would be putting our heads down and prioritizing what they were doing. The complexities of where that become hard gets into your spicy take from the first week, which is about ownership structures and equity and incentives and all of those sorts of things. But the value articulation thing, I think, we struggled in the early days.
Yeah, and I think just clarity on who and I think maybe one thing maybe that you have to do, and I think it kind of aligns to a number of different learnings and kind of research that will tell you, like, multitasking is basically impossible for everyone, and I think that holds very true for a business holistically as well. I think the learning that I'll take forward is, whilst there's a number of plates that need to be spun all at the same time, there should always be a single focus, a single customer focus, and that is a very clear articulation of who the most important person is that you're serving at any one point in time. Now, that may be like a category of customers, that may be a particular industry, or however you define that, but I think it should be very, very clear who the most important person is, or who the most important people are, and you should actively choose to prioritize those. And I think we did that up to a point, but where I don't think we got the timing quite right was where that switched from an internally focused most important customer to an externally focused most important customer. I think we probably tried to do too many things, keep too many people happy for too long. And I can't help but wondering what it would have looked like if we switched that focus a little bit sooner.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair, right? And again, it's easy to say in retrospect. The nature of the proposition is, it really is hard to find the right lessons there in terms of what would have been, if you're going to do it again, what other path would we take when I was thinking about focusing on value? Because, like, when I think about the whole focus and how you articulate value for an individual customer and having a focus on a product and a proposition, it's really hard, and it's easy to do the textbook. Like, I'm sure if you go and read the Lean Startup or whatever, like, that's the one. It's just going to be ruthless on this one little feature thing and be the best at all of that. It's just not all businesses are like that, and maybe it may be true that that's the higher percentage play. It doesn't mean that the other path is a zero. And the reason I think we thought we could go after a multi-product, multi-industry strategy was because a lot of that was on the outside from a sales perspective, not on the technology. Like, the underlying technology could be used in so many different ways of how we architected and what we did with it. And like, we were so fucking close. Like, in terms of the timing, in terms of, as I said, we're out there with our grad job. To be honest, we probably got our first promotion. Like, we weren't just walking in with the basic grad salary. We'd been promoted to senior analyst, and we were seeing, like, oh, this is what it means not just to be on the, like, the bread and butter from the first entry grad job. There was, like, the approach and the strategy nearly came off exactly how we had all envisaged that it would. Like, again, history says that the time didn't get there fast enough, and we got to a position of where it got to. And the value articulation one is, like, the truth is, it does feel like for a long time we were either, to what I was saying before, we were either saying something which was too complex, or it just wasn't short term enough in terms of the value.
Agreed. Well, that was great. Anything else that we've missed from the value articulation, Danny?
No, I think the only one I was just looking at a note there that we didn't fully touch on, which I think is worth just saying, is this whole concept that people will tell you the value. I don't fully buy into that. It's like, that is again the whole classic startup, and even in the labs we're all like, oh, go and do some research and go to talk to people, and they'll say, here's all my problems and this is what I need today. It's like there is an aspect to that, but it's not 100% to that when you're thinking about a category or something that just doesn't necessarily exist, because nobody knows how to think about that. They just don't know what they can do. You're talking about a new paradigm. It's like someone going and asking someone 5 years ago about, oh, like, what's your ideal experience for booking travel, and they say, oh, I just want the button spin. I want it to come up with the first thing first, so when I see it, I'm able to navigate to it, and I want the prices to be, and I want this. And then you fast forward 5 years, and you're just like, I just want to say I'm going to fucking Spain, and I want the agent to go and do all the research and to find all the things and book the itinerary and get to the point where I've got everything end to end, and it's just sitting there, and it's like, you good for me to book all of this? We're good to go, and I just review it. Because the experience has completely changed, because the technology is fundamentally different with where we are with AI right now compared to what the landscape looked like 5 years ago. So I think when you're moving into spaces where you can do new things with technologies, or you're trying to open up new paradigms in terms of ways of thinking, you have to lean a little bit into helping them understand the value. And sure, you need to map it on to short-term problems and how that will help one of their problems, but there is an aspect of education that you have to do in terms of letting people know what the art of the possible actually looks like.
Yeah. No, I love it. And we're going to touch more on this as we get into kind of a bit of the go-to-market and branding and this type of stuff. But I think the courage and the conviction as well to stay true to that kind of value story. I've been reflecting over the last little while. I think we were very early on with some of our messaging that was related to kind of the impending wave of AI, and we sort of drifted away from that as we've already discussed, as we tried to simplify the message and get more near term. And then ultimately what we're seeing now is a number of competitors, or a big competitor in another market who's kind of adopted that over the last month. And I just look at our packs from 2 to 3 years ago and think, fuck, that was what we were selling way back then, and we sort of stepped off it a bit. So yeah, we've probably spoken around in circles. We've given every piece of advice from different directions there, but I think it's a long-winded way of saying it's complex. But I think there's a number of good things to think about the next time around, Danny.
Yeah, and I think what we were saying before on how hard it is it is part of the learnings. It's hard to say, oh, you just do this and then you're fine. Like, value articulation and getting to that point where it's clear what you do is just hard. And it's like, you just got to talk to more people. You got to test it with more people. Maybe that's what we learn for next time when we're going out to talk about value. But I'm sure there's a lot of people will be out there talking with to test the value propositions of whatever we end up doing next. And there will be some exciting stuff on the horizon, and I'm sure we'll be able to talk about what some of that looks like in the not too distant future. But I guess as we wrap up, Mike, maybe it's probably just worth dropping into here. Like, we're starting to drop some of this information into some different forms in terms of some blog articles through the Failing Upward Club blog. We're obviously dropping this content like as a pillar of that in terms of a podcast and some audio and video. But really, like, where we love to see and test from this is like, what do other people think? What are other people's ideas? Like, engage however you can through the different points of contact. I think where I'd love to see this go as we start to get through the DataCo story is there's hundreds of stories out there around some of these topics, particularly from people who have failed at startups. So I'm sure we'll be tapping on the shoulder of some of the people we know in our network who have had great failures of businesses who we can kind of learn from as well. So I just encourage everyone to follow along, drop in some notes, hit us up directly if you're not comfortable putting in public forums. But the purpose of this really, like, there's no business motive of this right here. We're just trying to learn from what we did and take something which wasn't a we'd made a 7-figure exit for our startup, and here's how you do it. It's like, no, we had something which literally got deleted. We turned it off. We've turned it off recently. It doesn't exist. The whole thing does not exist anymore. And as much as that hurts in different ways, there's so many positives that we can take out of this if we reflect in the right way.
Yeah, well said. Well, thanks for listening in. I think we can now officially say, if you like what you're hearing, hit the like and subscribe button. We'll be back. We'll definitely be back for at least one more. But chat soon.